Hi, I'm Pat Collins, and welcome to Incredible Indies, a new program from CUNY TV that takes you inside the world of independent film. On this show, Dustin Hoffman offers his opinions about Hollywood and independently made movies. One of the stars of Silver Linings Playbook shares a behind-the-scenes story. We'll introduce you to a young director from a prominent acting family who is making her own mark in the indie world. Our opinionated roundtable guests are here as well. After watching a preview of upcoming films, you can predict what will be the indie hits of 2013, and we'll test your indie IQ. But first, Silver Linings Playbook took in over $130 million at the box office and was named the best film of 2012 at the Independent Spirit Awards. Co-star Jacki Weaver shared with us a memorable behind-the-scenes moment, and we learned more about how Silver Linings went from page to screen.
That's OCD. That's crazy.
What OCD? So I want my son to watch the game with me, so sue me. No, sit down. Sit down. Come on. I want you to watch the game with me.
I do,
it's
but
nice.
Dad,
I'm not superstitious.
I liked the way it was tragic one minute and hilarious the next, because in my experience, that's what life is about.
Jacki Weaver was nominated for a Best Supporting Oscar and an Independent Spirit Award for her role as the wife of an obsessive-compulsive husband, Robert De Niro, and the mother of a bipolar son, Bradley Cooper.
Get off! You're harassing me! He's harassing me!
Director David O. Russell is well acquainted with the film's subject matter. His son is bipolar.
Being in love with the characters, being in love with the story is what keeps me going. And collaborating with everybody. It's a privilege and a gift to collaborate with these actors and crew members.
It was a smart move by David O. Russell to put a positive spin. You know, he talks about how he wanted his son to feel a part of the world.
Matthew Quick is the author of the book that inspired Russell to make the movie.
I very quietly, in my 20s, suffered from depression. The fact that I do struggle with depression, you know, I try to make order out of chaos on the page.
What are you trying to do?
I like this road. This is my neighborhood.
Oh, come on, please!
Calm down, crazy.
In the book, Pat thinks of his life as a movie produced by God. You know, the hero's journey.
The whole time you're rooting for this Hemingway guy to survive the war and to be with the woman that he loves.
It's 4 o'clock in the morning.
Here's what Jacki Weaver remembers about that scene with her and Mr. De Niro under the covers.
I was fairly filled with awe just working with Robert De Niro. And I have to say that being in bed with him, it was very chaste. We had our jammies on. But yeah, I did have to say to myself, I cannot believe I am in bed with this icon.
I can't apologize. You know what I will do? I will apologize on behalf of Ernest Hemingway, because that's who's to blame here.
Yeah, have Ernest Hemingway call us and apologize to us, too.
Silver Linings is available on DVD and Blu-ray. The Graduate, Rain Man, Tootsie, they are among the films that made Dustin Hoffman an award-winning actor. Dustin added the title of director to his credits when he made his debut behind the camera with Quartet.
Welcome to Beecham House.
TEDx off to fetch the new arrival.
Who is it?
Dustin Hoffman wasn't convinced Quartet would attract a wide audience beyond the world of opera lovers, but producer Harvey Weinstein was.
Harvey Weinstein bought the film and he produced it, and I think he saw something that I didn't. It's basically about people who refuse to sit down, who refuse to retire.
Maggie Smith plays an adored opera star forced to give up her career. Quartet, like the Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, draws a demographic the Hollywood studios largely ignore.
The fact is that the baby boomers were always traditionally moviegoers, and I think the kids today are not. They have video games, they have iPads.
The two-time Oscar winner bemoans the lack of risk-taking in Hollywood now.
When I did The Graduate, it was 1967, and then it was Midnight Cowboy in '69, and then it was the '70s. And it's referred to now as the golden age of Hollywood. They could do basically small budget films that were about people. The indies now are making the movies that the studios did make back when I started.
We just heard Dustin say that he thinks that indies are the kind of movies Hollywood made back in the day when the studios actually took risks. And here to talk about that and a lot more, our panel of experts. Kyle Smith, film critic and columnist for the New York Post, Julia Bacha, an indie film director, Jonathan Marc Lipp, founder of the Big Apple Film Festival, and Barbara Rick, an award-winning filmmaker, president and founder of Out of the Blue Films. And Kyle, I'm going to start with you to respond to Dustin's statement about taking risks. You see just about everything. Are independent filmmakers today taking artistic risks?
I think they are, and I think Dustin's point is well taken that the studios used to make these kinds of movies, but Dustin just put out a very low budget and very nice movie called Quartet. That was his directorial debut. I thought it was a wonderful little picture. I thought it was far better than Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, and it dealt with approximately the same subject matter.
It both had Maggie Smith.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not an artistically risky picture, but a really interesting, small, heartfelt movie that I'm sure everyone knew was not going to make a huge amount of money, but the movie got made, and I think we see a broad spectrum of indies coming out. Something like 600 movies released in New York City last year.
600?
Yeah, of all budgets. You see big filmmakers going super low budget, and you see low-budget filmmakers doing something like 500 Days of Summer, and the next thing you know, they're directing a Spider-Man movie. I think indies are alive and well.
Jonathan, what are you looking for? Is there a kind of category? Are you looking for edgy, not too edgy?
I like to see films that are different, that are innovative. You know, the whole point of the film festival and the independent film community is to sort of, you know, get away from the traditional Hollywood scene. So I look for films that, you know, really sort of have their own identity. So I think any kind of film that sort of takes a risk or puts a new spin on something is one thing I look for. In addition to that, I would say films that have an audience, films that have some sort of niche audience, which I think is important in attracting audiences to a film festival. Because when you run a festival like ours, the Big Apple Film Festival, which is smaller than a Sundance or a Tribeca, to get audiences to come in, you really have to market and promote these films to a specific audience. Whereas a large festival like Sundance, for example, you know, they're going to sell out their screenings no matter what because they're Sundance. For us, we really have to look at each film and really devise a marketing plan and strategy for each film that we screen.
And that's a big way that independent film has changed over the years. It's really, you know, it's a must now to build your audience almost before you build your movie. You have to stir up.
So the first
audience.
question you're asking yourself is, I've got the subject. Who's interested in it?
Right.
It can be a very worthy topic, but unless you feel that there's a potential
you have to build
audience,
from your audience up from the ground up, like immediately before you ever even take a shot.
Yeah, and especially now with crowdfunding as being such a popular means of financing films, people are building audiences before the film is even made, which is great because then everybody feels like they're a part of it. The film develops its own community as it's being made, and then once it's finished, you know, now you have a market of people to go to.
I'm curious about these major festivals you go to. Have they become too commercial? I say this only because I see as much about the red carpet and the sponsors as I do about the films. What's your thought here?
I don't think so. I think that all the glitz and the glamour is really just a way to get people interested in movies that are for the most part, even at Sundance, they're still pretty edgy and they appeal to a niche audience. They may star Kristen Stewart or James Gandolfini or other familiar faces. But there's a very wide and very arty range of films there, and Sundance is very, very good at marketing itself. And as Jonathan mentioned, they fill up their screenings. They create this sort of air of exhilaration, and people stampede into a movie that when it comes out at sea level is going to be a total flop. I think they're absolute masters, geniuses of marketing, and they really do a solid for independent cinema by getting so much enthusiasm out there.
There are a lot of films that are brought into the labs and things like that at Sundance, Screenwriters Lab or Filmmakers Lab, and are nursed through. It doesn't mean you're automatically going to get a berth in the festival, but it means you're going to get a lot of the resources and attention that you need to help launch a film like that.
Does nurse mean that some creatives come in and say, gee, I'd take out that scene, I'd add music
there's
here.
like a focus on it creatively, a lot of support, a lot of resources
and funding.
and attention.
And there's, if you enter through the Sundance documentary, Institute, for example, they have funded a lot of my films, and that is very helpful because they create a stamp early on that then helps you nurture more funding because Sundance has given you this initial I trust you funding. And so that actually helps you go from, you know, sort of a place of no initial funding to actually being able to attract more foundations and individuals to support the work. And so it's actually a bigger, it's a whole, it's not just the festival. Like I obviously the festival is amazing, but no longer it's enough to just get into Sundance. Most films that get into Sundance are never seen or heard about again, and sometimes it's actually better to get a more prominent placement in another film festival than to be just one of the smaller ones at Sundance. So I think filmmakers, particularly with documentaries, are becoming a little bit more thoughtful around. Of course, Sundance is ultimately the best film festival, but is it really the best?
The audience
is it really the
knows
best
what it
for
is.
your film?
Yes.
That's the question I think that filmmakers need to ask more and more, and we certainly do. So talking about, for example, niche audiences, this issue for us, right, we work on a topic about the Middle East, about Israel and Palestine. So for us, an audience of Jewish Americans in New York City, Arab Americans, the sort of peace organizing community here is a lot more helpful for the film on the long term. So showing at Tribeca, which is not as respected, is for the life of the film better. So this is the sort of trade-off. It might not be the best film festival, but it is the most strategic one for you to use for the life of your film. And that's, I think, what independent filmmakers need to become and are becoming more and more savvy about, is understanding how different pieces fit together in the life of the film.
And we've had a lot of success at the smaller festivals. In fact, we seek them out. We just had a premiere of our new film, School of My Dreams, about girls, high school girls in Kenya who are changing the world. We focused on the Women's Independent Film Festival in Los Angeles because the woman who runs that is the sister of someone who was in another one of our films, and we got some special attention from her. She ended up having the opening night of the festival featuring our 2 short films. And we were able to create a deal with KCET to come on board and help sponsor that festival. So they work together.
Station out in Los Angeles.
Yes, KCET Link now. So they were invested because they've also acquired the films for broadcast. So it became this whole thing that fed itself. And we also just won 3 awards from them for at the same festival for Best Short Documentary, Best Concept, and Best Director. So it's a way of like taking that one tiny little film festival and making a whole opening night West Coast premiere out of it that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So we just find a lot of synergy and connection, and like sometimes the best births for our films are places that other people wouldn't even think of.
So this fits into maybe being, it's better in what you do, and what Julia's doing, is to be the, you go to the smaller pond, you know, you become the bigger fish in a smaller pond rather than going out to Sundance or
better
Cannes
than being
or
a
whatever.
small fish in a big pond. Yeah.
I have a thought about the sort of proliferation of film festivals. It's not a particularly innovative idea, but it's the idea that film festivals should start paying the filmmakers to show their films. Because I think the opportunity for film festivals to be the form of distribution is becoming more and more clear as the avenue, right? Everybody thinks how people can see documentary films, how people can see independent films. We're all trying to use the film festivals, the major ones, the sort of A-list, to find a distributor who will then put our films in the theaters. That's not a viable option anymore. That doesn't exist for 99% of the films that get made out there. Because the independent distributors are not making any money, and they're all, most of them have gone underwater. Like the big distribution companies that had art sections to their distribution have folded, most of them. And I think the film festivals, just to get back to that, could have a role to play in this distribution mechanism, since there are so many of them, since they keep growing, since they become more and more niche oriented, and which is great. I think that is a good thing for the film festivals to do. I think stories are really important. I think films, there are beautiful films about many different subjects that are not for the general public, but that particular audiences, minorities or groups that are working on particular issues would benefit tremendously from seeing, would be inspired by it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with finding a way for those to get the distribution they need.
We found that festivals pay a lot less than they used to. And many of them cry poverty, or they're unable to barely keep going. They just don't have the resources. There's been a big shift for everyone. It's kind of like the Wild West out here. I mean, in terms of on the distributor's end and on the filmmaker's end. I mean, it's just really trying to diversify as much as possible and figure out what are the best ways we can monetize. Like, let's think out of the box all the time, because otherwise you're just going to go under.
We want to thank all of you for being with us. Time to test your indie IQ. Here's your first question. A yellow Volkswagen T2 microbus transported the cast in this 2006 film. The answer, Little Miss Sunshine. Spike Lee made his first feature film for $185,000. Name the movie. The answer, She's Gotta Have It. Who are the stars of Sofia Coppola's film Lost in Translation? The answer, Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson. She is a Hollywood blue blood fascinated by vampires. Xan Cassavetes, the daughter of the late indie film pioneer John Cassavetes and actress Gena Rowlands, makes her directorial debut with Kiss of the Damned. I met Xan at Delicious Vinyl, the vintage record store in LA. She was in a punk band called Shrine before she began directing. But why her fascination with vampires?
I don't really, I mean, Twilight to me, especially having made a vampire movie, everybody's, so outraged about Twilight, and we're sick of vampire movies and all that, but vampire movies have such an opportunity for philosophical exploration about being a human and more sort of mature topics about life and death and sexuality.
Did you want to introduce mystery, sexiness into vampire movies again? Was that one other reason for doing the movie?
Yes, probably. Not all stories to me are heavily dependent on sexual psychology, but this one is, for sure. And vampires are, sexy, youthful, powerful, beautiful creatures. And in this film, the sex scenes are very narrative. They're not just, somebody's like caressing someone and it fades to black and they wake up the next morning. It's a huge part of the conflict in the movie, or what's told, or what's released, or what's submitted to in the film. So with the story, above and beyond being a vampire story, sexuality and those moments really fit. But as vampires, certainly, that sexual power and that sexual mystique definitely had its place in this one. Male vampires are spectacular in their own right, but, a female vampiress is sort of representational of the mystery of women, even women who aren't vampires. So yes, I loved having beautiful women in their beautiful clothes and, with a certain amount of power, but definitely with a lot of vulnerability.
In Kiss of the Damned, two French vampire sisters, one good and one evil, vie for the affections of a young screenwriter. He loves one and not the other.
What it's about to me is about basically how one navigates between nature and what is unnatural, your primal side and your intellectual, moral side. And this is, there's a house and it's very unnatural and it's set in this nature setting, and all through it are themes of this contrast between what's natural and what's unnatural. Unnatural not necessarily being wrong, but just a very different thing. And that is basically the theme of the whole movie.
I'm paraphrasing the quote that I read, that I think you said, that this is a film that John Cassavetes fans would be surprised his daughter made. Tell me about that.
Well, I remember it was in the context of another interview where they were speaking a lot about John, who's my idol, of course. But I mean, the most defining feature about John is his individuality, is his fascination with human beings and his reluctance to ever do something that has been not directly from his heart. And that's what I love about John and relate to as his daughter and little filmmaker daughter or whatever. But yeah, I mean, John made these, super auteur movies that were very, very serious and dramatic, and in his life and what he did for independent cinema is,
he put it on the map.
About as masculine as you can get. So it might come as a surprise that one of his children would have tried to make her first feature film as a vampire movie, which doesn't necessarily come with like a great amount of respect. And that I would, you know, do something like that when the pressure of this genius is looking down upon me or whatever. But I don't feel that way. I feel like my dad would have loved this movie. I think he would have thought it was strange, and I think he would have thought it was bizarre and shocking and beautiful. I could be wrong, but that's what I think.
It is a disturbed creature. A recent study conducted by the organization Women in Film found that for female directors, there are more opportunities in independent film than at the major Hollywood studios. I asked Xan if she agreed with that.
The first thing that comes to mind is probably women are more interested in the topics that are covered in independent film. So, I mean, there are certainly probably women who would rather be making Hollywood films, but I mean, it's very difficult for anyone probably to break into that. And I think when you make a Hollywood film, first of all, you don't get final cut. So, I mean, unless you are Steven Spielberg.
It's rare.
Yes, so I think that it's very appealing for directors to have final cut, and even if it means working with less and harder circumstances. But I would think, and I don't know this, but I would think that women would be more drawn to making personal films.
On set as a director, do you give your actors and actresses some freedom, or you have the Bible and we're going to stick to it? What is your style?
Well, I mean, honestly, probably a little of both. You know, it's like you kind of got to remember, I mean, an actor is in their scene doing their thing, but you're in charge of looking at the overview of the film. So you have to keep some consistency in your mind what the threads are. So, you know, you give them, I love it when an actor does their thing and brings in things. In this movie, Roxanne played that part differently than I had thought about it in my mind, and I loved it. She played it as halfway this bratty younger sister who seemed sort of benign, and in those moments she was bratty, and then in the moment she was evil, it was just like, whoa, instead of just snarky evil the entire way through. Something like that I didn't foresee. When she started doing it, I loved it. You know?
More nuanced than you thought.
Yes, I mean, just bringing a whole different element to the character. I mean, even as far as that goes, you know, if I think it's working, I like it. The director has to be in charge of that kind of stuff, but I love a creative environment, not just with the actors, but with the cinematographer and the editor and everybody. I mean, that's what the fun of making a movie is.
Certainly the independent film world has become more popular and has a wider audience. What does that tell you about independent films? Does this encourage you, or is it part of you say, this is all good, but maybe the films are being too commercialized?
Well, I find independent films generally to be very conformist, and you know, it's not me just saying it, it's widely known that independent films are sort of calling cards for Hollywood for a lot of directors. They certainly aren't radical, and I miss that because, and I'm not saying they're all not radical, but for the most part,
the majority are not.
Yes,
they're not taking
risks. The mandate
risks.
is not to be radical in any way. Au contraire. You know, that's what I loved about films of a different era, and particularly European films, and also, you know, American films of a different era. The challenge was to be more creative, to have more thought behind it. To,
audacious.
Yes, to create a missile blast instead of something that blended in and was just like that. So yeah, if you like that, you'll like this, and you'll like that. If you like, this is a very if you like that, you'll like this kind of culture. It's just not how I grew up. I mean, in my formative years, I saw all that tail end of all that stuff, and it hasn't left me. So, you know, while I think it's great that everybody gets an opportunity to make films and you don't have to necessarily be a part of the Hollywood system, I think that it could be put to more creative use, yeah.
Kiss of the Damned is available on video on demand. Time to test your indie IQ. An Independent Spirit Award is named in honor of this pioneering director. The answer, John Cassavetes. What 2004 movie goes best with a glass of Pinot Noir? The answer, Sideways. The film's title contains the name of a celebrated member of the cast. The answer being John Malkovich. Here's your last question. In what New York neighborhood does Mean Streets take place? The answer, Little Italy. Beasts of the Southern Wild Moonrise Kingdom, and The Intouchables were among last year's favorite independent films. Here's a preview of new indies coming soon to a theater near you.
Shots fired, Fruitvale.
Based on a true story, Fruitvale Station recreates the events leading up to the death of Oscar Grant, an innocent 22-year-old African-American who was shot and killed by an Oakland, California transit cop on New Year's Day 2009. Michael B. Jordan and Oscar winner Octavia Spencer co-star in the film, which won a grand jury prize at Sundance. Sam Rockwell adds another memorable role to his resume as a water park manager who befriends an awkward 14-year-old boy in the coming-of-age film The Way, Way Back. The cast also includes Toni Collette and Steve Carell. Girl Most Likely is the movie most likely to appeal to Kristen Wiig fans. After staging a fake suicide, Wiig is forced to live with her gambling-addicted mother, Annette Bening.
Ready, ladies?
Obsessed with Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice and finding her own Mr. Darcy, Carrie Russell checks into Austenland, an English resort billed as a Regency-era immersion experience. Bring your own scones. The Spectacular now arrives in August with Miles Teller as a hard-drinking party boy who falls for a brainy high school classmate played by the Descendants' Shailene Woodley. New York socialite housewife Cate Blanchett escapes to San Francisco after her husband, Alec Baldwin, leaves her for a younger woman in Woody Allen's Blue Jasmine.
I don't know why you kids.
Expectations are high for a Sundance favorite, Ain't Them Bodies Saints. Casey Affleck escapes from a Texas prison to find his wife and former partner in crime, Rooney Mara, and the child who was born when he was in prison.
There's only a few things I really care about in life.
First-time director Joseph Gordon-Levitt cast himself as the online porn-addicted title character in Don John. Scarlett Johansson and Julianne Moore teach him the true value of intimacy.
What are you doing? I was just reading emails.
No, you weren't.
Also heading your way, Kill Your Darlings with Daniel Radcliffe. I'm Pat Collins. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you next time on Incredible Indies.